What is up, Dolphins Talk Extra? Welcome to your bonus segment of the Same Old Dolphins Show for October 10th, year of our Lord, 2024. Brain, I enjoyed the mailbag episode of the show that we just did. That was a lot of fun.
That was fun.
It was great. I enjoyed it. I hope we do more of those in the future. I think exclusively, maybe not all of them, but I think a bunch of them, maybe we'll do that exclusively for the Patreon subscribers, the Dolphins Talk Extra folks. And it looks like we've got some Dolphins Talk Extra folks joining us live. So let us know in the comments. Remember, you got to watch the live stream in YouTube and comment in YouTube for us to see your comments live for the bonus segments and exclusive live shows, because the refreshing the Patreon feed itself does not work for us in terms of getting the comments. But yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. If you enjoyed it, let us know as well. But Brain, what I want to talk about in this bonus segment, at least get us started, is some of the goings on in the AFC East. I want to start with the most recent news, which is the New York Jets and or Aaron Rodgers firing Robert Saleh. This is a team that is 2-3, but it's a team that has not played well. In a lot of ways, very similar to the Dolphins. But what is different from the Dolphins is that they have had their new franchise quarterback the entire time, and they have just not looked good, really. With the exception of the game against the Patriots, the Jets have just not looked good at all.
Yeah, well, I think, look, as much as people mock the Dolphins for being a circus of an organization, the Jets from top down are just a clown show. The owner is a clown. The GM is a clown. This has been, I mean, going back to, the hiring of Adam Gase, heck, probably even before then. But it's just, there's no real direction. To me, the Jets were moving in the right direction a couple years ago when, they brought in Saleh and he built this defense, and it was a great defense, but it didn't pan out because they failed at the quarterback position. And they've also failed to bring in a real offensive coordinator. And obviously, that's sort of the...
What do you mean they failed to bring in a real offensive coordinator? They got Nathaniel Hackett back there.
Yeah, I mean, just an absolute joke. But even before then, when you had Sam Darnold or when you had Zach Wilson, it's not like they really had any competent offensive coaching staff there either, which you definitively need when you have a young quarterback, which they've had young quarterbacks up until they had Aaron Rodgers. And look, they basically sold their soul for Aaron Rodgers. They basically said, look, we're mortgaging the entire future to bring Aaron Rodgers in. And what they were hoping for was that he was going to have the impact that Peyton Manning had when Denver went and signed Peyton Manning a few years back, and took over a team that was basically a 500 team that had a strong defense but had bad quarterback play, and that he would come in and just absolutely transform the offense, and then it would be a Super Bowl team. And it just hasn't happened. Granted, I think they clearly still have major issues on the offensive line, and Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career is not the Aaron Rodgers from even 3 years ago. Certainly not after his Achilles injury from last year. So that said, would I have fired Robert Saleh 5 games into this season? No, I think that's like a desperation move. I don't think that it makes them better. It's just kind of a head scratcher to me. And so I just think it's another bad move by a dumpster fire of an organization.
What do you make of the idea that apparently the rumor is that Saleh was going to fire Nathaniel Hackett, and theoretically Aaron Rodgers got wind of that, and that's his boy. And so that he had a conversation with either Joe Douglas or Woody Johnson. And that resulted in Saleh getting the axe.
I mean, if that's the case, then it's even worse than I thought.
I think
it's
clearly a conspiracy theory kind of thing. And I don't typically traffic in the tinfoil hats thing, but all you need to know about the New York Jets is that I don't think I'd be surprised if that turned out to be true.
I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm surprised if that turned out to be true, but then it's just even worse than what I initially thought. It's just like you can't have it. And at that point, it's like, well, Aaron Rodgers clearly doesn't care about winning.
Yeah, well,
I mean, because
I don't know if Aaron Rodgers cares about very much of anything right now.
Yeah, well, and that's fine. And that's something that was literally talked about before they went out and traded for him. Before they went out and made the move to go get him, to mortgage the future, to determine that this is going to be the guy that brings us back to glory. It was talked about, like, does Aaron Rodgers even care about football at this point?
Yeah.
And so now people are still having that same conversation.
Yeah. Oh God, I don't know. It
just goes to show you it could always be worse. We could be Jets fans.
Right. It's like, that's the thing. Whenever I am upset about the Dolphins, in recent years anyway, at least I can take solace in the fact that we're not the Jets. So
would you spell solace SALEHS?
No, I would not. But thank you for asking. I appreciate it. I appreciate the question. Let's talk about the other big thing in the AFC East. Brain. Speaking of brains, have you seen this video of Josh Allen being knocked out on the field against the Houston Texans?
They had to give him smelling salts.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something.
He was literally, I mean, you look at the video, he is unconscious on the field. And then his whole thing is, I gotta find the quote about him from him online. But basically the whole thing is, he said that he went in, they checked his ankle. They asked him if he was okay. He said yes. They let him back in. And I don't want to draw parallels between Josh Allen. What?
You want to draw the parallel.
Well, I mean, there is a difference between a guy like going into the fully graphic fencing position and having a significant concussion, as has happened with Tua now on 2 separate occasions. And, a guy getting knocked out for a second. But here's the thing. The NFL, remember the whole thing was that after that concussion in the Cincinnati game, they said, we're reevaluating our concussion protocol. We're looking at all of this. We're having independent neurologists on the sideline, and we want to make sure that there is no joke, because the issue at the time was that people thought Tua may have had a concussion the week before, ironically in the Buffalo game. Right. And he had that moment where he was wobbly on his legs. And from that moment on, suddenly it was like, well, the NFL is going to be very strict, and they've got spotters whose entire job it is to see somebody exhibit any kind of sign of possibly being concussed. And if there is any indication, then that player is being pulled out of the game and being placed in the protocol. And everyone remembers famously in the first game after Tua had his concussion, the very next week, on the first play of the game against the New York Jets, Teddy Bridgewater gets brushed by a hand and was somehow exhibiting a sign of concussion and was immediately pulled from the game. What I want to know is the NFL has not, to my knowledge, announced that they were relaxing any of their concussion protocols during the game, right? They haven't made that announcement. So how does that spotter and how does that sideline neurologist see a player literally lose consciousness and have to be given smelling salts on the sideline? And how do they go, yeah, it's fine for this guy to return to the game? Like, that's the thing that bugs me here, because the last that I heard was that the NFL was super interested in player safety and player health, particularly when it comes to head injuries. But here you have a legitimate superstar regarded widely as a favorite for NFL MVP this season. And he takes that shot and goes to the sideline and is evaluated, misses like a couple of plays, and then is back in the game with smelling salts? Like, how is this possible, Brain? What am I missing here?
I don't think you're missing anything. I think I think you may have, touched on part of the reason. I think there's layers to this. I think first and foremost, the fact that he is a bona fide superstar. I know, people could say Tua was kind of that, but at that point in Tua's career, in that season, particularly early in that season, when those concussions happened, or when the suspected concussion followed by the concussion happening in the next game, those happened pretty early on in that season, which ended up being like his breakout season. And so Tua at that point was not some bona fide superstar. Also, there were, I think, Tua had his detractors all along. At this point, Josh Allen is I almost dropped the Jason Allen. Remember Jason Allen? What a bust of a pick that was. But Josh Allen is a bona fide superstar, bona fide top 3 quarterback, arguably top 2 quarterback, certainly MVP candidate, and also his size. And I think while it should have nothing to do with the conversation, it should have no bearing on the conversation that he's a big dude and Tua is a smaller guy. I think there is inherently a bias there by viewers and by potentially the league itself, in that Josh Allen, because he's a bigger guy, because he's always running, and because he plays a physical brand of football, he's a guy that can handle his concussions. Whereas Tua gets his concussion and then he does the fencing gesture and has to get carted off the field, and he can't handle it. He's not as tough. And I would take it a step further, because everybody talks about Tua when he gets a concussion. Obviously, this thing's happening with Josh Allen, and nobody's really talking about it. Players are getting concussions on other teams all season long, and are placed in the concussion. are placed in the concussion protocol, and maybe they miss time, maybe they don't. They come back out onto the field. They're not going on to IR. It's at this point, I would say it's rare, honestly, that a guy is going on to IR with a concussion. But the Dolphins granted, with his history and with the publicity that's gone along with it, you understand why the Dolphins said, look, we're not taking any chances here. We're putting him on IR. But what is it about Tua specifically compared to not just Josh Allen, but other players around the league at different positions that get plenty of concussions that don't end up on IR, and it doesn't get talked about when they come back and have another concussion 6 weeks later? Is it because he's a quarterback? Is it because he's a polarizing player that people want to have opinions on and they want to be right? And so if they were Tua haters coming into the league and said, oh, this guy, has gotten injured a bunch in college and he's never going to be healthy, or he's never going to be big enough or have that pro arm to succeed at the next level, that they want to be right. So every time Tua gets a concussion, oh, he's too small. Like, that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I will say the reason that I think Tua gets so much attention is that he vividly and graphically suffered a major concussion on a nationally televised game. And because of that, combined with the fact that people thought he may have suffered one previously, and then went on to have another concussion at the end of that same season, that is part of it. And then the other thing is that he took what I would classify as an everyday NFL hit in that game against Buffalo. That was not a particularly violent play. It was not a direct shot to the head, like a dirty shot, an illegal shot. In fact, he was the one who initiated the contact. It was such an everyday ho-hum football play that, and then it happened again, and it looked similar to how it looked the first time. That's why he gets put under the microscope. That's why. I think it's a combination of that and the fact that he is, and I think some of those other factors probably figure into it as well. But I always said the NFL implementing these more strict concussion protocols were always going to truly be tested when you got to late in the season and the playoffs and the Super Bowl, because the NFL is interested in player safety and player health, but it is only interested in player safety and player health to a point. Because if you had, if you're in the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl is between, I don't know, let's say it's Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs and I don't know. Let's say Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Okay, two bright up and coming superstar quarterbacks. Or let's say we're in an AFC Championship game and it's Patrick Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson. And one of those two guys takes a hit, and it looks like they may have gotten their bell rung. Is the NFL going to force that player to go into the concussion protocol? The concussion protocol that we now know is next to impossible to clear in a single week. Right? Like, it basically now means, like, where we're at in the NFL is that if you suffer a concussion during a game in 1 week, you're like 95% going to miss the next game. Right? Malik Neighbors is a case to look at right now. Malik Neighbors suffered that concussion on a Thursday night game. Was it Thursday? No, it wasn't Thursday. It was on the Sunday. It was a Thursday night game 2 weeks ago. suffered a concussion at the end of that game, missed the game last week. So that was a full week and a half later, and now is probably on track to miss this upcoming game as well because of the concussion protocol. So, that concussion protocol is the NFL going to, in a playoff game, is the NFL going to say to the Kansas City Chiefs, if Patrick Mahomes takes a big hit early in the game, yeah, not only is he going to miss the rest of this playoff game because of the concussion protocol, but he's going to end up missing next week's game too, because you can't clear the concussion protocol in a week. That's when you find out how serious is the NFL's concussion protocol. Well, we're seeing it right now. There is no reason that Josh Allen should have been allowed to go back into that game and not been entered into the concussion protocol when he's literally knocked out on the field.
Yeah. And, I think, granted, this was 15, 16 years ago at this point, so things are different. But I remember it was the first thing that popped into my head when you said, oh, well, it was the way that Tua reacted to his concussion, that it was so visible and everything, and that now that's the way that he's looked at. Well, I want you to go back. Maybe you remember it, maybe you don't. But if not, go back and look at, just search 2008 Anquan Boldin sinus fracture. Anquan Boldin was playing for the Arizona Cardinals at this point. Let me know if you find the video. There's a 47-second clip on YouTube you probably find. I think they were playing, was it
sinus fracture?
Yeah. I mean, he took this crazy hit in the end zone. It was in a September game, but I remember seeing it live, and it was, and it was played everywhere. Let me know if you find that video.
It is. I got it.
I'll stay quiet. You watch that video and let me hear your reaction to when he gets hit.
Oh God. Oh yeah, he's dead.
Yeah. I literally thought he died on the field. Yeah, I literally thought he died on the field. He played 3 weeks later.
Really cleared concussion protocol.
Yeah, and Anquan Boldin, if you remember Anquan Boldin as a player, was not a soft receiver. This guy was physical. He didn't change the way that he played. He was a more physical receiver at the end of his career when he was playing for Baltimore and getting in the mix in the run blocking game. I think there is a bias against Tua specifically. I think there was a bias against him coming out of college, that he was not big enough to play quarterback.
I think
and then that, and obviously, yes, the fact that he got concussed the week after, the questionable, was he concussed, was he not concussed, the fact that he had to get taken off on a stretcher, the fact that he had the fencing reaction. Yeah, that all plays a part. But Josh Allen could have had that reaction last week. You could argue this reaction was just as bad. And I don't think you'd see I don't think you'd see the people who were calling for Tua to retire after that game. After that Cincinnati game, you had people saying that Tua should retire. Nobody's calling for Josh Allen to retire because he got knocked out. Nobody's calling for anybody to retire after they got knocked out. But people want Tua to retire. And you're going to get, for every person that says that, well, I want Tua to retire because I care about him as a human being and I don't want him to get hurt. For every one of those people, there's about 10 other people that just want.
You don't need to infantilize an NFL player.
Yeah, well, first off,
he's a big boy. He's a big boy that just made $1 million. Millions.
If you're that concerned about NFL players' health as human beings, that you want them to retire, you would literally not watch the sport.
Right.
Because they are all putting their life on the line every single time they go out there.
Yeah, there's not a single player in that league that doesn't know what they're signing up for. None of them. So, yeah, I don't know. The whole thing has just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And not as a defensive Tua, not look, have they done us wrong? Not that way, but just, I always believed that the NFL was implementing these new rules, but that they weren't going to truly be tested until it was one of their legit superstars that found themselves in that position. And we have seen that. Look, and is it possible that Josh Allen wasn't actually concussed? Sure. But the NFL absolutely needs to have a rule that if a player gets knocked out on a field and is out cold for any period of time, just like in the UFC, right? If Josh Allen had been in that spot in a UFC fight, he would have been ruled to have been knocked out. And then I think it's like a 6-month thing that you have to wait 6 months before you can fight again because you got knocked out, right? So the NFL has to have some sort of rule in place that if a player gets knocked out, that at the very least, they're done for this game. You got to implement a rule like that. You know, I think it's going to be very interesting to keep an eye on Josh Allen in this week to come. And let's see what happens to him on Monday. He's in a nationally televised game. Isn't that interesting? The week after a quote unquote phantom concussion, which is what people said about Tua, Josh Allen is going to be playing in a nationally televised game on Monday night against the New York Jets. And so I think we just should keep an eye on it. I'm not saying that I'm wishing anything bad on him, but if something were to happen where he were to take a hit and have some kind of significant reaction, I think the NFL is going to need to take a long, hard look at itself, because I think they have, I don't know. I feel like they've made a mess of this in this spot.
I mean, my understanding of it, and granted, I'm no doctor, but my understanding of it is that if you get knocked unconscious, it is a concussion.
Well, I mean,
that you don't necessarily have to lose consciousness for it to be a concussion.
Right.
But that if you lose consciousness, it is a concussion. So if he lost consciousness, again, I'm not, but my understanding is that would be a concussion.
What are your
thoughts?
For him
to not even be in the protocol is crazy.
What are your thoughts? Let us know. Dolphins Talk Extra. Discuss it on the Patreon. Discuss it in the Discord. Put it in the comments. Let us know. But that's going to wrap us up for this bonus segment of the Same Old Dolphin Show. We appreciate you. Thank you so much, as always, for being subscribers. We wouldn't be doing this without you. So we're super glad to have your support. And yeah, we will talk to you. We'll talk to you on Monday night. Until then, go Dolphins.